The fourth step in the scientific process is the fun step. It's where you get to conduct your experiment and observe to see what happens. Now I have my procedures right here so I know what to do for each step. The first one is fill each container with an equal amount of water. Now remember, the water is straight from the tap, so I know that the water is the same temperature in each glass. I need just a little bit more water in here. The second step in our procedures is to add 2 tablespoons of each substance to separate containers and stir with a spoon. Be sure to label each container. Here is my tablespoon measure. The first thing I'm going to do is the sugar. So here's 1 tablespoon. Here's a 2nd tablespoon. I'm going to stir. And since I've used a spoon for this container with the sugar, I'm going to set it aside. Then I'm going to label the container so I don't get it mixed up with the other ones. Sugar. The next one I'm going to add is my baking soda. There's that fizzle I was talking about, a little bit. Stir. Set the spoon aside, and then label this container baking soda. And then last is my salt. You never want to pour anything into a spoon over your container because you might get some into the container, and then that way you would be adding more to your container than just the 2 tablespoons. And then label salt. And of course our last one is just plain water. So I'm going to label that too. Now we're going to go ahead and drop the eggs into each container to see what happens. We need to remember to think back to our hypothesis and see if we're right. So the first one is the water one. We already know what's going to happen here. The egg should sink to the bottom. And sure enough, it does. For the salt one, now remember my hypothesis, because I float better in the ocean, is that the egg's going to float in the salt water. So let's see. And look, I was right. So my first hypothesis is correct about the salt. Okay, now the baking soda. I kind of thought that the baking soda was a little bit fizzy, so when you add water to it, so I thought that the egg is going to float in the baking soda too. So let's see if I was right. And nope, the egg is sunk to the bottom. So my hypothesis about the baking soda was incorrect, but that's okay, because I found out the right answer. The last one is sugar. So let's go ahead and see. My hypothesis for the one with the sugar was that the egg would not float, that it would sink to the bottom just like it does in the water. Let's see if I was right. And I was correct. So the only one where the egg floated was in the salt water. The fifth step in the scientific process is to draw conclusions from the experiment that you've just done. So here are my conclusions. If you add sugar to water, it does not make an egg float. If you add baking soda to water, it does not make an egg float. But if you add salt to water, it is going to make your egg float. Now that you know all the steps in the scientific method, you're ready to design your own experiment. Let's review real quickly. The first step is to ask a question. The second step is to form a hypothesis. Your third step is to design the experiment. The fourth one is to conduct the experiment. And finally, your fifth step is to draw conclusions. Good luck with your experiment and have fun.